How are you?
Very well. How are you, sir?
Good, good. So last time you were on the podcast, I think a few months ago, we were speaking about relationships, and I think you said something kind of offhand. It wasn't really the focus of what we were talking about on something like men with options or choosing to date non-Western women, or maybe it was your suggestion, men don't date Western women. You explained why. I think pretty briefly. It wasn't like the main thing we're talking about. But I received a message from a female listener, a friend of mine who listens to the show, who's a Western woman, and understandably got upset at that idea. And actually, a third of my listeners are women. I assume most of them are Western women or of Western culture, so it's understandable. And she and I ended up arguing about certain things. It was a debate turned into an argument, but I think she actually brought up some good points, and I want to discuss all of it with you because what you brought up, I've seen a lot of men speaking about online. What she brought up, I think, is also valid. And I would love to speak about this because I think this is a hot topic that I think both men and women could get a lot from.
She should have been on the call. We're gonna have a great conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll bring her on for like a round three.
That'd be great.
Mm. So actually, could you just maybe repeat if you remember what you said or where you're coming from with this idea?
Um, I'll say it this way. I have become more successful with women than most of the men that I know. In terms of meeting them, dating them, having long-term relationships with them. I'm in a long-term relationship now for a couple of years. And so I've figured a couple of things out, really focusing on my way of being with women, my interaction with women. And yet nothing has given me more, has taught me and lead me to success with women more than moving abroad, than meeting women in Romania, meeting women in Colombia, meeting women in Brazil, meeting women in Japan, meeting women in Kenya. And the learning and the saving grace that you receive there has had such an impact on me, and I see it has such an impact on men who do that, that I advocate to every man. Well, it's one of the two main things I I advocate is to go on an epic mission and explore dating outside the Western world, because in most places in the world, the dating scene is completely different from the Western scene, and Western men in most places in the world are way more welcome as they are than in the Western world. I think it's something
Would you
like that
say
that we're
it's
talking about.
Western men or men are more welcome in the non-Western world?
Western men,
Specifically Western men.
yes, a lot of Western men are very welcome in, or Western men are very welcome in Latin America, are very welcome in Eastern Europe, are very welcome in Asia, are very welcome in Africa.
Mhm. And okay, so I have a lot of things to say on it. I actually want to bring up the things that my friend said because I think they're worth discussing in regards to that. One thing she said was that, I guess that her main criticism point was that instead of leveling up Western men, or this line of thinking is saying, okay, instead of leveling up as a man to meet the greater needs that Western women are bringing up, I'm going to go to a country where the standards are lower and the game is easier. What do you think of that?
I wouldn't say the standards are lower. I wouldn't say well, yeah, the game is easier. Yes, it's 100%
Hmm.
easier. And I'm not saying a guy should move, and leave it all behind. I am saying he should have that experience and see something
Hmm.
different. If for no other
Yeah.
reason, when you go into a club in Nairobi, it will take you 5 minutes and you will instantly understand what hot women are going through in the West. You understand the stimuli they have to deal with, that you will understand the pressure that they have to deal with. Because when you, as a white man, go to a nightclub in Nairobi, you're the hot chick, and so you understand that. And so for no other reason than that, it's a good experience. There are many other reasons, but
Hmm.
I am not saying move there, but go and see a different dating scene, and you will understand way more the Western dating scene, because you'll have a different perspective. It's like a wine connoisseur. You ask a guy, what's your favorite wine? And he says, this is the best wine in the world. And you ask, how many wines have you tasted? Just this one. Or another guy goes, this is the best wine in the world. This is the greatest wine. It's an American wine. It's a great wine. And you ask, how many wines have you tasted? Oof, thousands. The choice of that second man is not a better choice, but it is a more informed choice. And 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 if I am to choose a wine, I will trust that guy more. you know and so even for
Hmm.
women in the West to be able to trust a man's choice for her, you know what is that choice worth if that man doesn't have any options? What is that choice worth if that man never felt any abundance? What if if he only knows her, and never had a chance of something else? You know? Like, it could work. It could perfectly work. You know, but I would trust a wine connoisseur more if he has tasted more wines, and it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. Women can trust men more if those men have seen something different, if they have felt, if they have options, if they have abundance, and then they choose her. So everybody would win from a Western man who has experienced something else.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's a few layers to this thing. Actually, what you just said reminds me. I was just speaking with a friend about the prodigal son parable from the Bible. Like the son who left and chose to come back is celebrated more than the son who chose to stay forever. It's similar idea, but actually, I think the because I do want to address. I specifically want to address like the Western woman's concern with this idea or pushback. Because I think there's a lot in here, like this idea, and actually I'm playing both sides because I'm trying to play devil's advocate for this whole debate. But what I said to my friend when she brought that up was, I actually think it's a fallacy, a specifically Western culture fallacy, that harder is always better. That because Western women are harder to date, and we can discuss why, that somehow that makes you a better man to date. And I see a lot of guys who I coach in relationships who think that the hardest woman to be with somehow makes them a better man. And actually, that's a fallacy. Like, it's actually not beneficial to either party to always try for the hardest situation. It's not like, not everything is a weightlifting analogy, so to speak.
Man, yeah, I mean, you got to choose your battles in life, And I have my battles with work. I got challenges every day. I have my challenges with health and fitness. Racing up mountains. I'm an entrepreneur. I have challenges every day. I don't want my relationship to be a challenge in that sense. I don't want it to be.
Hmm.
I mean, a relationship is hard, you know, but it I have no desire that, or I have no, I don't want it to be harder than it is. That I got
Hmm.
I got hard and stress all day long. I don't want to come home to my woman and be stressed even more. That's for
Yeah.
me. My relationship with Elena is my homecoming. It's where I feel at peace, is where I have no stress. It's where it's not hard in the sense of like dramatic. It's not dramatic at all. It's still hard, but it's not dramatic. And so, and I don't want that. And I've had plenty of that, and I know how to deal with it. And it's
Hmm.
not what I want, because it takes away the energy I could spend in taking care of my family, of creating in this world. And I want to come home to my woman. And hard, yes,
Hmm.
but dramatic, no. And if harder means more dramatic, I don't want it. And I'll tell you, any
Yeah.
any man of who's creating something in this world, he doesn't want that extra stress on top of it. He doesn't want that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of believing in this. Like when I was living in New York City and first developing confidence with women, I found myself particularly drawn to feminists because it was like if I can be with a feminist and have her go into her feminine, that must prove that I'm really in my masculine. That must be that's the heaviest weight at the gym. It must prove something to myself. And then when I moved to Thailand, I actually had judgments of guys who'd only date Thai women because it's like, okay, this guy couldn't get a Western woman, so he's going with the easy game, so to speak. But I mean, more recently realizing that all of that's kind of nonsense, right? Because like you're saying, like a relationship's not meant to be a war. It's not meant to be the war of two people's masculine sides. It's meant to be harmony. Challenges come up as
Yeah,
they come up, but you don't need to create them, you know?
that's a great way of saying it's harmony, and that's the goal. I mean, I'm sure you learn. I've been with, very powerful, strong, very dramatic women, and I learned a bunch from that. And it's not what I want long term. If I am to create a family, if I'm to create what I'm creating in the world, that's just not helping. And so I don't want that.
Hmm. Yeah. So I just want to bring up one other thing my friend said before we move on, because I think it's also very interesting and maybe telling of because what we're speaking about is not meant to be a criticism of Western women. For me, at least, is a criticism of Western culture giving us values that are not conducive for harmony in relationship. But one of the things that she said is that, which I think is actually an interesting quote, men historically have had to compete with each other, but now since women have independence, at least in relationships, men don't have to compete with each other. They compete with a woman's inner peace. Like, can you provide her something that's better than her being alone? Which the way that Western society is set up is actually the case, but I don't think that's a good thing. You know, it's like it's actually not natural. And like the type of woman that you're describing, I've coached. I used to coach women more than men actually, and a lot of the women I coached were these high power, entrepreneurial, very often beautiful, wealthy women who had terrible relationships because they wouldn't get out of their masculine. There
Yes.
was nothing that can compete with, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I think you were about to say something.
No, I'm not. But yeah, I've
Okay.
been with them too. I've been with them too, and it's not
Mhm.
like, you know, I could date Western women, and then I met my wife, and she's just so respect. Well, I first meet her, and she's so like playing along in the dance that is seduction. Like it's not. I'm meeting her, and she's letting me know she likes me. She's not playing hard to get. She's not like our dates are not like job interviews in which I am applying for the job of boyfriend, and the woman is like going through a checklist.
Mhm.
I don't have to prove myself to her. And she just dances with me. It's like I make this comparison. I learned so much from dancing in Colombia, and I'll let the listener make the parallel with the relationships. I remember I was dancing in Medellin, and we're dancing bachata. And I danced on an evening with a Australian woman, with a Colombian woman, and then with the Colombian teacher, also a woman. I danced with the Australian woman, and she's knowledgeable about the steps of dancing, and we're like trying to figure it out. And I'm telling her it's like this. She goes, no, it's like this, and then. And I'm trying to dance. It's not pleasurable. You know, it's not pleasurable
Mhm.
because I have to try to I have to like almost force her to follow my lead in a way. Then I dance with the Colombian woman. She doesn't know dancing. I don't know dancing. But she follows me like, okay, if you make mistakes, I'm going with you. And we make a lot of mistakes, but it was pleasurable. It was great dancing with her. It was fun dancing with her, even though we made a lot of mistakes. And then I danced with the teacher, and she a female teacher, and it was a revelation to me because she wasn't telling me what to do, like the masculine way of teaching, and the
Mhm.
Australian woman way of teaching me. She was in her being. in her surrender, in her following me, because in the dance, I'm the leader and she's the follower, even though she's the teacher. But in her, the way she followed and in the way she surrendered, it was like I knew what to do. Like she wasn't telling me do this and this, but it's like I can't really explain it, but it's other than in her surrender and creating of space, I felt called like to be a man, to be a stronger leader. And it's like I had more skills, like I knew what to do. And it was a revelation because we think of power. I think of power. I'm a man and it's like a domineering thing, you know? And in the Western culture, power has become synonymous for that masculine power. But I learned from that dance that the feminine power is in something completely different, you know? And it's in the way she surrendered that she was all powerful. It was in the way she surrendered that she was teaching me. And I think we've lost that in the West, the understanding of what that means, of how to follow. Because for us, we think like if we follow that, we lose power. Something like this, you know, if we
Hmm.
surrender that, we're
Yeah.
secondary. And it was not that way. It's like that woman was my teacher, you know, she was way more powerful in that than I was. And yet in the dance, you know, she was following. She played her role, her part perfectly, and the role of follower, and yet she was the powerful one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I mean, I say this on my podcast all the time that one of the biggest ironies of feminism is that it uses a totally patriarchal value system. Like this idea that it's
Mm.
better to be a CEO than a mother. That's a purely masculine value system. Like if the world was
Yes.
truly run by women,
Yes.
motherhood and femininity and softness and what
Yes.
you're describing of that teacher, that would be the ultimate value. But it's shit on and is absorbed into Western culture, and men and women see it this way. Actually, I wanted to bring up. I was going to bring up tango anyway because I opted into your email list and I've been reading your emails, and I think you told a version of that story, and it made me think of
Yes.
tango. Like when I was taking tango classes, there was the teacher. I was taking classes from this Argentine couple, a man and a woman. They were both teaching, and we would all dance with each other. And I was always afraid to dance with the female teacher because I thought, oh, I should practice with other women who aren't good, right? Because then I won't mess up. And when I finally danced with the teacher, I had a similar realization. I realized like dancing tango is like driving a car. Like with someone who doesn't know how to follow, it's like an old with the gears that are not shifting properly, and it takes a lot of effort, and you really need to put a lot of muscle into it. But dancing with the teacher, the first thing I noticed was she immediately. I ended up like leading her in a way a little too rough. One, because I was used to dancing with women who wouldn't want to follow, so I had to really use a lot of effort. And she kind of twisted her ankle, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I did this terrible thing. Like I twisted the teacher's ankle, but she was so sensitive, like a sports car, so sensitive that me being uncoordinated, she just went with it, even at to the point where like, you know, and I think this is the reason why women have hardened because they don't want men to twist their ankles metaphorically. But it taught me I need to be way more sensitive because this woman is actually going to go in any direction I lead. So I actually have to be tuned in and not let her ankle get twisted. And then
Yes.
that's what taught me way more than dancing with women who I have to like use so much effort and energy to
Exactly.
like overpower her. You know what I mean?
That's a great metaphor. I use that dance metaphor all the time, you know. It made me think also of, as you were talking about feminism, it made me think of Simone de Beauvoir. Do you know Simone de Beauvoir?
Mm-hmm.
She was the wife of Jean-Paul Sartre, and she's hailed by the feminists as one of the first feminists. And I forgot the title of the book, but it's incredible writing. And the way she describes the situation of women is so well articulated. It's so spot on. She's like describing it as if in her time, women are are never are not seen as independent entities. They're more seen as in relationship to. She is the wife of, and they're always they're they're identified in relationship to the other. And the way she described that is so insightful. And I get it, and that's where feminism comes from. And it's very powerful and it's very right. And and so understandably feminists uh, use that book and as one of the precursors of feminism. And then but they forget that when Simone de Beauvoir was asked towards the end of her life, what is she most proud of in her life? She said, I was the wife of Jean-Paul Sartre. And so it's incredible to me that say that first feminist is is understanding that power is not in her like being domineering, but that she proudly could say, I'm the wife of Jean-Paul Sartre, who's also a great philosopher. But yeah, feminists don't say that, they don't like to hear that. But to me, that sums up both the power of why we need feminism, and then also it shows where we go overboard, where we miss in a way, where we like you said, where we start defining power in a complete like patriarchal way, or masculine
Yeah.
way, or not in a feminine way.
Yeah. And as you're pointing to feminism, it's totally understandable why it would exist, and it's totally understandable even the things about Western female dating, let's say, that it's unpleasant. It's understandable because we can say maybe for many, many generations, men stopped fulfilling their role that allowed women to be attached, and where that was like a good experience. Like men stopped containing women, or they started abusing the power that was handed to them. So of course women had to seek independence and create their own, or develop their own masculine side for their protection. And of course there's many really terrible stories of men abusing women, but that's not even the norm. It's more like men just not showing up in the way that women needed to be fully surrendered and happy with it.
Well, sure thing, but or I think I'm never like when I describe the situation. I don't. I very. I'll repeat it. I'm not blaming women. I'm not blaming men. And I'm not even like. I'm not very good at describing a causal relationship, or why did we get to this point. Because you could tell a story, and any causal explanation will be a reduction of the complexity. We're where we're at, and it's messed up. I'm not blaming men for it. I'm not blaming women for it. I am blaming men and women who are perpetuating this mess that we're in, And I am looking at what are ways out of this, How can we make it better? And yeah, so
Well, I will actually take a stab at it anyway, because I do think, obviously this is all conceptual and a lot of this is me speculating, but if you look at the way if you look at the way women behave in relationships now, and then you look at how pre-civilization we understand relationships were, it's like women, specifically because when a woman gets pregnant, she's like highly, highly vulnerable. Women weren't by themselves. And even like, a woman, even the convention of a woman taking her husband's surname comes from, up until marriage, she was under the protection of her father, and she wore that family name because that was who had her back. Then she goes to her husband, and her husband, the idea of like a father giving his daughter away, it's like, oh, now the husband protects her. And there was never a case where a woman would be in the wilds by herself, because if she got pregnant, specifically if she got pregnant, she's creating life in her body. She needs a husband or tribe or father or some sort of people taking care of her. She would never be alone. She would never choose to be alone, which is why, if you look at even the desires of a totally feminist woman is to be contained, whether it's in the bedroom or in the relationship. Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, another thing, I know I'm running around on this, but have you heard of the Bechdel test? Have you heard that term?
no,
It was a joke, a satirical joke created by a feminist cartoonist on how almost every movie fails this basic test where there's three rules. One is there has to be more than one character in the film that is a woman. Most movies don't have that. Two, the two women have to have a conversation with each other, and three, the conversation has to be not about a man. And basically every movie up until I think the 1980s fails this test. Like maybe all three of those things don't exist. And even now, and the funny thing was with Wonder Woman, when Wonder Woman came out, everyone was celebrating, oh, finally a female superhero, all of this stuff. Wonder Woman fails the Bechdel test, actually, right? Like, because it's just the hero's journey of the way we tell fiction in a patriarchal world. Just it fits the male mind, it doesn't fit the female mind, and all of our
Mm,
values and culture is based on a male mind, even feminism, which is the great irony. Anyway, I could rant on that
mm.
longer, but I just wanted to
Yes.
throw that out.
Yeah. I don't watch movies, so.
Fair
But
enough.
yes. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
before that, and this may be a provocative thought, but you say every woman wants containment, you know. And I wrote before that every woman, well, two things. Every woman wants to find a man she can trust enough to surrender to, and every woman seeks to domesticate her wild man, and she is never more happy than when she fails. And so it is. I see it everywhere all the time. It is part of the feminine that try to domesticate, appease the masculine, and the masculine cannot, the masculine should not give in. And if we've dropped the ball, we dropped it in many ways, us men, but that certainly is one of them, is that we gave in, and we became domesticated. And so women are now angry about it, they're angry about the nice guy. They're resentful towards the nice guy. And so it made me even believe, imagine this, Ruan, this whole, I can, I can hear the comments coming already. What if this whole feminist movement, what if this whole Me Too movement, what if this whole uprise is a shit test? It's one big massive shit test of the feminine that is in the way that she knows, trying to have men become men again. Is women who poke at men just to feel their masculinity. It's women provoking men so they would be strong enough to create that container for her. And for me, that's super insightful, to look at it as a
Mm-hmm.
one big shit test. And so women are doing 100% what they need to be doing right now. And it's us men to rise up, to become men again, to answer that call. Maybe not in a direct way, but to respond to that shit test. So I
Yeah.
love to see it that
Yeah.
way because it's,
Because
for me, a very constructive way of looking at it, and it shows a way out.
Yeah, because one of the biggest lessons that I've learned and had to relearn with women is to not listen to what they're saying, but what they're actually communicating. And there's many applications to this. And what you're saying is kind of like it's the cultural version of it. And
Mm,
unfortunately, and I was speaking to some young men about this some time ago because they're upset about how culture is feminizing them or making them weak. And I'm like, dude, that's true on the macro level, but for you who's aware of this, the bar for masculinity has never been so low. Like you, if the
exactly.
few men who know this, like you're gonna be in that top. Like you can, any guy with a spine can be in the Pareto elite when it comes to dating a relationship. Like it's actually the easiest time. If we were living in a
100%.
warlord's time, the average guy would have no chance. You're competing with Genghis Khan. Are you kidding me? Like now you're competing with
Yes.
what? Like
Now
very
you,
little.
now you just have to say stop or no when your boundaries are crossed, and already you'll be
Mhm.
more trustworthy than 90% of the men.
Mhm.
So
So I actually want to go
100%,
into
the bar is way lower. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I want to go into actually some of the specific, we can say maybe differences of culture,
Hmm.
of maybe the specifics of why you suggest men date outside of the Western world. Yeah, actually, if we could go into that.
Well, first, the one I just said, which is, is you feel abundance. It will be good for you. Um, like the wine connoisseur, know something different will
Hmm.
make your choice more informed. Um, but what dating abroad has given me is to be saved by feminine grace. It's such a life affirming experience for me, who was dating only in the West, to go to Romania, to go to Colombia, to go to Japan, and be welcomed by feminine, traditional women. And just, it was like
Hmm.
on a soul level, like beyond me and her, like it was like it's like a
Like
homecoming
you
of
just fit.
my masculine being. I felt very called to be a man. I felt very called to be um, a protector. I felt very called to take more responsibility. I felt I felt honored. I remember moments that like they make you cry. I went to Japan. I remember, and I was sitting in a metro, and I was just sitting down, and this beautiful woman comes in the metro, and I don't speak Japanese, and I tell her to sit next to me, and and I say "samui desu ne." That was my only phrase. It's cold, no, and like instantly she cradled my hands, and it's just it's and this woman saved me. I remember waking up one morning, and she's at my desk repairing my pants because there was a hole in my pants, and I'm not used to this, And I wake up to that, and I remember I just start crying. This welcoming and giving feminine spirit. It's just, yeah, it's life affirming and relaxing, and
Hmm.
I wish every man to have that experience. To have that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think, one of the wounds, let's say, that's, I think, very common amongst Western men, and maybe all men, is this idea that it's not okay to be you. Like, it's not
Yes.
okay to want the things you want, to have the feelings that you have, which I mean, of course, women have experienced this historically as well. It's not saying that they haven't, but it's kind of heightened. Actually, I did an episode on this recently. Did you see how there was an article that NPR put out saying that no fap was somehow misogynist? You know what I'm talking about, right? Like masturbation abstinence.
Yes. No
Uh,
fat. That I know. But
anyway,
NPR, I don't know
yeah,
what
no,
that
no,
is.
no fap. NPR, it's a common, left leaning. I don't know if they're even left leaning. Maybe common media outlet. They have a lot of podcasts and radio shows. They put out a thing criticizing NoFap as being this evil, misogynistic thing because it's somehow, if you abstain from pornography, you're demeaning women because most sex workers are women, and you're saying that women shouldn't be sexual. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, less than a generation ago, it was misogynistic to watch porn and sexualize women. You're saying the opposite. And my cultural analysis of this is whatever men are doing on their own, these anti male forces are saying it's wrong. It doesn't
Yes.
actually matter what the thing is. If they want to jerk off to porn, that's bad. If they don't want to jerk off to porn, that's bad. It's like a kind of like a way of slapping them. It's a manipulation technique. Like, oh, you want to date Western women? You're wrong. Like, it's like whatever you do is taking away this independence of free thought, basically.
Yes. Or even men being only with men. That's a big no in the West, because evil things might happen, and it's one of the big wounds that we have no more brotherhood. We have no more,
Hmm.
men being among men. We have no more locker room talk. It's not allowed. It's bad. And it's
Hmm.
absolutely essential for a man to have a space with only men. It's absolutely
Yeah.
pivotal in his growth towards masculinity to have spaces with only men. It's absolutely essential if he's ever to be the pater familias, take care of a family, that um, he's been I forgot the word, but um, like brought into um, manhood by other men, and receiving the feminine grace is also part of that induction, into that. But certainly, a growing in all men spaces is equally essential. And it's like, oh, we can't do it, men only. No, 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 because bad things will
Yeah.
happen if there's only men. But it's so
Do you see
necessary,
there was
man.
a study? A study came out recently by Robin Dunbar, who's a really famous anthropologist. He's contributed a lot. He's the one who came up with the law of 150, that we're only supposed to have 150 connections. Anyway, he put out a study showing that a man's mental health depends on having 2 nights of guy time a week. Like, men who have this are way more healthy than men who don't have this, and it's gotten a lot of pushback. Actually, like the comments I've seen on like posts of this is like, no, no, that's misogynistic. Only
Was it a
an
study?
immature man needs to be with boys. It was a study done.
So
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and women need the same thing. It's like one of the challenges I discuss with my wife a lot is like, we don't live in a tribal environment where all the mothers can be together. Mothers who've known each other in their entire lives can be together, because as much
yeah,
as I and many of the other fathers I know do our best to support our woman, we can't provide the same thing that a group of
of
mothers and
course not. Of
grandmothers can. Like, we're never going to be
course
good
not.
at it, as good at it, right?
No,
And it's
you'll
kind of
never be her
against our nature
grandmother
to just
ever.
sit and listen. Exactly. You're right. And it's kind of against my nature to sit and listen to her feelings without coming up with a solution. Like, that's like the joke in every
Yes,
man woman relationship. But that's not like, I'm not evolved to do that. I'm supposed to go out hunting and figure out engineering
yes,
problems with my boys, not listen to your feelings all, which is, of course, is an important need of women, best
yes.
fulfilled by other women they know.
Yes. Now, well, you can debate that, but for sure, women need all women space, men need all men space, and it's
Hmm.
very badly regarded right now. And it's just insanity. It's just,
Hmm.
it's, that's not the only study. And I see it from my own experience. We need brotherhood, and we crave it. We yearn for it. We've lost it. We don't know anymore about how to be among men. We have no allies. We have no elders. We have no heroes. It's just is shocking for men. So nobody tells us how we should do it. How you
Hmm.
hold an axe and how you treat a woman. And so we don't have it, and now society and women are telling us how we should do it.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you about. So I actually haven't dated non-Western women much. I've coached guys who've dated non-Western women, and the closest thing I could think of is when I was living in New York. I dated some Dominican women who grew up in New York, but they still had Latin American culture. And one thing that I've noticed, and a struggle that I've seen in guys dating Russian women or South American women, is the bar for masculinity is very high. And
Hmm.
actually, it's these kinds of women that I'm thinking of my experience with Dominican women. Like, if you act feminine, or if you are not sure of yourself, or if you somehow are not being a traditional man, in quotes, they'll either make fun of you or call it out. Or if you're in a relationship with them, they might even be like directly mean. And I can think of a few like British guys I know who've dated Russian women who experienced something like, wait, what? I'm being a good man. I'm being like I'm doing all the things that British women want, and she's punishing me for it. I'm curious what you think of that, and maybe, well, I have my own interpretation. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I don't know which women you're really talking about, because
Hmm.
I felt a real call, an invitation to be, say, more masculine, more traditional. And at the same time, I didn't feel the pressure to be that. Like, meaning it was easy for me to be a man with these women. Like, when I think about
Hmm.
my wife, it's easy for me to be the leader of the family, very easy. Like,
I would guess though, from knowing you, that perhaps your masculinity was already developed enough when meeting such women. Whereas I'm thinking of a guy who's raised in a more Western situation. He's not used to
Mhm.
having that. Anyway, I just want to share like my thought, my retro interpretation of this is like these kinds of women, non-Western women or highly feminine women, know that they want to surrender very soon or like immediately. Like they're not going to go through this interview process or testing process. So like you have to prove to them that you can handle them right away because once you do, they're going to surrender. And if you don't, they're afraid they're going to get their ankles broken. So they need to kind of challenge you early on to make sure that you're
Interesting.
strong enough.
But I've
I guess it's a
seen,
shit test ultimately,
yeah,
a different
I've
kind of shit
seen
test.
so often. This is what I've seen. That these Western men who are way more like I I have actually a lot of interviews with these foreign women, and I because I wonder what is it in those men, and what I see that they like is um, that they're less domineering, and that a Western man is a lot more caring than a lot of the men that they know. And like I have interviews with women from Rwanda and Japan, and Colombia, and this comes often back that Western men, American men, Western European men, they're a lot more gentlemen. They're a lot more gentlemen than the men that they know, and that's a big part of the attraction to these men. Um, I agree with you that at some point, you know, within that relationship, as you start dating, there will be an invitation to be more masculine, to be more of a leader, and it's something that a lot of Western men have no facility with, but in the attraction phase, I've seen it so often. Women have told me, they love Western men because they're so gentlemanlike, they're so caring, and a lot of women in Eastern Europe, a lot of women in Asia, a lot of women in Africa and in Latin America are not used to that, and they miss that, and they want that, and a Western man gives that to them, and so it's not like the game is easier for Western men in those places. Yeah, also, but it's also just a good match. It's a good match, and I'm proof of it too. Like my wife and I, we get along in ways I'm not used to that. I'm like, huh? I I thought relationships were. I believed relationships were a lot more struggle, than what it is now. A lot more. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm answering you, but I'm just talking about
Yeah.
my experience and what I've seen,
Yeah.
helping guys, you know, um, explore different dating
Well,
scenes.
it's unfortunate that the other pairing doesn't fit necessarily in terms of relationship. Oh, although you do see the opposite as well. Like you do
Oh, I
hear
tell
of
you.
Western women going on, but it's more like sex tourism. It sounds like, or they're looking for an African man who can really take her, kind of thing, or something like that. But you don't hear of those like actual relationships so much. Of like,
Mhm.
maybe you do actually, but
You
I haven't
do.
seen that.
I think of a
And,
couple
and, and
now.
maybe money is part of it too, honestly.
Money is always part of it, Money is always part of it in every relationship, even in Western relationship, like money is part of it. It's And so it's just different ways that money is part of the relationship, but it's not so that in the West,
Yeah.
money is not an issue. It's an issue from day one. It always is, and not a problem. It just is.
Yeah.
It's just.
But actually, I to contradict what I just said, I am thinking of, I do know a lot of Western women, a lot of my friends in both Asia and Latin America, well, they'll fall in love with, a Latin American guy or an Asian guy, and she's into it for what, she's into him, but she hates the fact that she has to pay for him because she has the better currency. And that's
Mm,
always 100% of the time that seems to be the ruin of the relationship, unfortunately, because no woman really
mm,
wants to be in the
interesting.
provider role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see that happening.
I have one question for you. Actually, I was just thinking that it's a little bit off this topic. about anonymity in dating versus, say, dating in a small town. Um,
Mhm.
because all the dating advice that I received when I happened to be living in New York City was based on the idea that you can try a bunch of things, you can learn to take risks, you can learn to, I mean, the old school style of dating coaching was just approach tons of women and get experience that
Yes.
way, which has pros and cons, of course. But of course, that doesn't work in a small town. It doesn't work in a
Yes.
place where there's a lot of trust, where there's a little bit more natural, where if you talk to someone and you have an approach go really terribly or you say something by accident that's offensive, you're going to end up meeting her brother the next day. Like that, I don't know exactly what my question is, but I've been thinking about this because I'm living in a small town. About half of my male friends now are single. They're telling me, or they're single dating. They're telling me about this experience, and it's very different. I was like, "There's no way old school pickup would work in a small town."
No.
And I'm curious,
No.
maybe if you have any experiences of going around the world or being
Yeah.
in more, I don't know, less city
Slow
environments.
seduction. I mean, I travel for 15 years, but I don't travel like I'm not a tourist. I'm not an expat. I'm not even a digital nomad. Like I spend time in a place and I meet people and I want to grow, and settle in a way. So um, seduction becomes a very slow process in this. And it has pros and cons. Like the advantage of anonymity is you're allowed to make many more mistakes, and you can learn from them. Although I think in the game of love and romance, you don't really learn much from your mistakes. You learn more from success because it could go wrong for many ways. But if you have success, if something clicks, it settles in your body. But
Hmm.
yeah, I've been in places like I remember in Colombia, and there was this girl in my favorite restaurant, and I would go there every day, to eat. It was the best restaurant, and there was like a romance growing with her, and I was going very slow because I didn't want to ruin it, have it become awkward, and not be welcome anymore in the restaurant because it was the best food. And I remember that because of that, because of like the slow seduction, some intimacy was created with her that would not have been possible if I didn't feel that danger of messing it up. And I went very slow. And I remember her even, she was like sitting on my bed, and like, and I was still waiting. And then, when she was leaning in, and then when we finally kissed, it was just magical. It was just so, and it showed me that there is great energy also in slow seduction. And so I'm probably not answering your question on the how to, but I like to think, okay, it's slow seduction, and I love that a lot more. I love it a lot more when I'm going to see someone again. I love it a lot more when someone becomes captive audience, and you'll see them again because then I know my personality is going to shine through, and it's not going to be a pickup line or it's not going to be a hookup but my personality is going to shine through. And when it does, I'm cool. I'm confident that I will attract the women that are good for me. So yeah, I actually prefer that. And
Yeah. I mean, it sounds so much more authentic. And I think one of the worst ideas that has become common, I think, in dating, maybe Western dating, is like, oh, it's a numbers game. Like if you view it that way, and maybe for some guys to get over basic anxiety, it's good to
mhm,
think of it that way so you don't feel so bad. But that's
yeah,
like one of the most damaging things for romance, I think. If you think of it, and any guy I know from who's done a lot of that, like a lot of like random hookups or a lot of approaching 100 women and sleeping with X number of them,
yes,
they don't feel like the way you describe some of these moments, like it's like a personal, important story, a
yes,
beautiful story, a memory you cherish. Whereas you don't get that for men or women. If you're just going through, looking at it as a numbers game, you don't have that enchantment because
yeah,
ultimately nobody just wants to rack up numbers as much as they want to have memories. Actually, I'm remembering a Zan Perion talk where like the most important thing are the memories you create. Like that's only happens with
yes.
what you're describing, not from approach. I met her because I approached 100 women that day. Like, you're not
Yes.
going to think
I
of that
mean,
the
I'm a
same
big
love.
defender of men approaching and like the whole going forward, and but the value of it is not in the connections you will make. The value is in getting over your fear. The value is in taking full
Hmm.
responsibility. The value is in growing. When it comes to my most memorable romances, they were very natural. They were very natural, and they're friends that presented a woman to me. And they're things that grew that way. And so, yeah, in terms of romance, like real romance, the thing you get caught up in, it's a lot more natural, and it requires a lot less of your like conquering spirit than say the pickup industry would want you to believe. And I still defend it because you know it's a lot of men are not doing anything about their love life. They're not happy, and they're not doing anything about it. And 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 approaching and like focusing on your relationships and doing something, like approaching, is very important. And the other one, and I'm going back now to the first thing, my second recommendation is like go on an epic adventure, like go and see something.
Hmm.
So they're
Yeah.
both are important, I would say.
Well, you said something really interesting, which is you learn more from your success than your failures, which I think is also counter to what most of us are taught, maybe in the West or maybe in the world.
Yeah.
Like you have to, again, do the hardest thing, fail, like that. That's what, and of course there's truth to that. And of course,
Yes.
getting rejected is important. But I've actually been thinking this, like, in how I want my children to be educated. I don't want them to experience too much failure. I want them to obviously not to have things handed to them and not have everything be easy. They need to know how to, try hard. But it's actually like positive success is like, when you think of the natural with women, he was lucky enough to have maybe really good experiences when he was a kid with girls, and he grows
Yes.
up just having that confidence. He didn't need to go
Yes.
through a bunch of failure to have a great relationship or a great love life in his adulthood.
I think this now. I never thought of this, but I wouldn't want to limit the amount of failures that I had. But I will tell you that it is in those moments of success that I made the most progress. 100%. The first time this absolutely gorgeous woman liked me. Like I remember in Brussels meeting this woman of Madagascar, and she was so beautiful. Like, oh, like my heart skipped a beat when I saw her. And I remember sitting with her one evening, talking my ass off, that yapping away, drinking rum, and she liked me despite of all that. And I didn't get it. And we walked home. We passed the hotel, and I remember she just said this. She said, we could go in here. And I remember, that that experience, to see like this beautiful woman actually likes me, it changed everything for me. Like from that point, I thought there's no more woman out of my league, and I could feel it. Like it's like you pass a stage in a computer game, like the body has
Hmm.
wisdom. Like since then, everything changed, and I knew it, and it was the success.
Like
And
you have a template, a positive template
yeah,
for.
or like my relationship I have with Elena is so beautiful, so powerful. I'll never accept anything less than that, And I come into that I come with that meeting other people, and it's an incredible effect. And like women know it, women know, We walk the streets, and Elena goes, she's almost like, damn it, because she sees women like, and I'm actively not looking at women, but I've become this a man now who has this great relationship with this young, beautiful woman, and we get along so well. Women can feel it, and it's super attractive. I can say it, and so
Hmm.
it's like a bodily knowledge, and the bodily knowledge radiates, and it's like you'll never go back to less than that. And so
Yeah.
that's why I think that success has more leverage, has more, you learn more from it because your body like shifts into something, it settles into something, and way more than here. The body has knowledge and
Yeah.
the mind tries to figure it out, but it's, yeah, that the
Yeah. And
success is way
actually,
more
I'm
important.
thinking the failure piece, and I guess maybe what I was trying to get to is I hate using the word trauma too much, but like avoiding traumas, like avoiding like a instead of having the template of success, you have this template of failure. Because I'm thinking like there's been a lot of
Mm,
guys I've coached around dating who, when they
right.
first are having success, they reject it. There's one guy like he's had beautiful women come home with him after a long dry spell, and then he's still thinking, oh, she doesn't really like me. She's being polite. I'm like, it's 2 a.m. She's like half naked on your bed. Like you think she doesn't like you, but he has so much failure that he can't see the success in front of him. And like that's really unfortunate, right?
Yes.
And we can laugh about it, but I've seen this a lot, and I've experienced it
Yes.
myself too. It's like you need those templates of success to really understand. Okay, oh, this is reality. Like I can have this. It's okay, whatever
Yeah.
it is. Not just dating, of
And
course.
accept it. But I think you're 100% right there. Is like you got to avoid the template of failure because, like, it's your, say it's your way of regarding what's happening. It's your way of interpreting what's happening, and so it's not just a success and a failure because I what I deem a success, other people might see as a failure, and so it's really the template of failure. I'm losing,
Yeah,
instead of I'm winning.
or template of yeah. Actually, I mean, maybe for what I'm about to say, trauma is even a more relevant things. I wanted to share this with you about the Western women idea. I was actually speaking with a friend of mine. He just went through a difficult breakup, and it was particularly difficult because he really loves and cares about this woman that is now his ex girlfriend. But she had all of these things that, yeah, I mean, not to go into details, but like wouldn't let him lead, or she has certain traumas or certain pains around the masculine. And he was telling me, we were talking a little bit after his breakup about like, as much as he loved her, he realized in that relationship, his ideal woman has these certain qualities. And he listed a bunch, but the two that jumped out to me was she has a good relationship with her father, or had a good relationship with her father, and not too many boyfriends, previous boyfriends. And
Mm,
we kind of talked about that. I was like, that's interesting. This is not to shame anyone for whatever. Obviously, a woman can't control if she had a terrible dad, or it's not to shame a woman for having lots of partners, whatever. But both of these things kind of point to she's not wounded around the masculine. Like she
mm,
doesn't, her template of being with men is positive, which of course is going to translate to whoever her boyfriend is. And I was like, oh,
mm.
I never really thought about that, but it's so important actually in choosing a partner
Yeah,
because yeah, if she's had her heart broken 10 times or many times before you, of course she's going to bring that into the relationship. And it's unfortunate for her, but it's also unfortunate for the guy who has to deal with it.
I'm mapping that onto my relationship, and I can see that he would make that list and think about that after the breakup, and it's interesting. I
Hmm.
never I never thought of that, like choosing my partner,
Yeah,
because
I didn't either. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
what I experienced with my wife is it was so completely natural, like it made all of a sudden so much sense, like, and it's way beyond, like it's not like I had a checklist or a list and it was checked. In fact, she was completely different than what I had in mind, like completely, and yet it was instantly I thought, yes, of course, like all of a sudden it made 100% sense. And so what I learned to believe in those things is yes, you have to go 100% for what you want, like, and get clear on what you want and make those lists, and then, and if you go for it, life will give you what you need, not what you think you want, but what you need. And I could sense it, like Elena was put on my path. I'm like, well, thank you. Is completely different than what I thought it was going to be. And yeah, I wrote that true love changes everything you believe to be true about love, because that's what's happening. Like, my beliefs are changing, my things of what I want, they're changing, and it's completely changing, and it makes 100% sense. So I guess I'm talking to your friend now, like, and then, like, he's doing what he needs to do, like, understand and study it and become better, and then life gives you something, wow, thank you. That's my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. On those both points, like, I didn't really think about it. Like I didn't, I had a similar kind of like, yes, this is my woman when my wife and I connected. But after looking at it later and having a family now and getting to know her family, I'm like, wow, I really lucked out that my father-in-law is great. Like he's like an awesome guy.
Mhm.
She and him, he obviously wasn't perfect and they've had their fights or whatever, but like he's like a really great model of a man.
Mhm.
And I can see how
Yes.
I do so well with her. She's so good to me because she had a good model of masculinity and she doesn't have these terrible
Mhm.
wounds, which unfortunately many women have. But it makes it very hard to be with a woman like that,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
who's angry at men, right? Like, and I've dated so many feminists who are angry at men. It's like nothing, even your best efforts, the best man's efforts, is not going to really cut it,
exactly.
unfortunately.
Yeah, and you got to choose your battles. I've had super feminists, like, they see me and my wife, and she's very young, and they instantly judge it. It's like, and why, you'll never be ready for a woman like me, and I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to. You're entitled. You're, much older. You're out of shape. You're disrespectful. Like, why would I take on that? It's like, that's not a battle I want to fight. I got other battles to fight. Like, dealing with you in that way is not one of them. And it's like you said, is never enough. When there's an entitlement around it, it's never enough. You can never win that. And that may be the biggest. I'm holding your female friend in the background, but I'll have to say it. For me, the biggest difference between Western women and non-Western women is that Western women have way more a sense of entitlement when it comes to love and relationships. They believe that because they're women, they deserve success in love and romance. They deserve it, and it's a man's job to give it to them. And so the opposite of entitlement is taking responsibility. They're not taking responsibility. They're not playing along. And so it's an uphill battle for men to be in that space. And again, I'm not blaming women. I'm not blaming men, but it's definitely a mess, and it's definitely something that the experience is completely different in Eastern Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Asia. You know, you have women who take responsibility and who play along, and who play their part, and 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 take responsibility for the success of that relationship. And it's just back to the dance. You want to dance with the Australian woman, or you want to dance with the Colombian woman, or you want to dance with the Colombian teacher. Like, what's the greatest experience, and where are you going to learn most? And I know the answer for me. I know what's the most fun, and I know where I'm invited to be my masculine self. And so,
Hmm. Yeah. And I do want to, I meant to say this in the beginning of the episode is that, we're saying, Western women versus non-Western, but it is really like a cultural choice. It's like not like if a woman in Australia is listening to this, it's like, of course, like no man's, it's like, it's a choice of behavior on
of
choosing to be
course.
soft or choosing, it's not like, your ethnicity doesn't damn you to whatever, just like any man can learn how to be anything.
No,
And
of course.
I just want to say this, you know, because I
Yeah,
think the very positive side of this, none of this was meant to complain about anyone as much as there's a certain template, let's say winning template between men and women that tends to be more prevalent in non-Western countries because maybe I would say it's closer to nature. I don't know. That's me speculating, but certainly what Western culture promotes is not it. And it's very not healthy or useful to
Just look
both
at
men and
how
women.
Western dating scene is. Per my account, 90 more than 90% of relationships end in suffering. 90%, because like think of the person you were with before you were with your wife. Those are all. I mean, not all of them end bad, but so many relationships end with at least one of the two people saying, "I never want to see you again anymore." Like just looking at the dating scene, we're not doing well. We're not doing well when it comes to dating and relationships. Relationships are not the source of happiness and health that they can and should be. And so Western dating is not in a good place. It just isn't.
Hmm. And this might be a whole other can of worms, but like hookup culture in response to this, I specifically see, and I think of this because I have a daughter, like hookup culture is actually beneficial to young men who succeed because that's what a young man wants to experience. But women who go into hookup culture trying to protect themselves from this heartache end up suffering, seemingly from everything I can see, seemingly across the board because they don't get the opportunity to be soft and surrendered within a presence that can take care of them. They close up, and then they can have a lot of partners that doesn't actually fulfill them.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never in my life hooked up ever. I can't. Maybe it's my ego because I want to be like loved for who I am. I've never hooked up. I don't like it. Doesn't. So I can't really talk about it. But I I do believe it's bad for you, like men and women. I do believe that. If there's no soul connection, I can't see the advantage of it. I've never wanted it. I've never wanted it.
Yeah. So anyway, all of this has been to shed light on cultural paradigms that are beneficial versus non-beneficial. I know you have a program specifically for men who want to date women of this more beneficial culture, let's say. We'll add the links in the bio.
Okay.
Yeah,
If
in
you're
the
if
show
you're a
notes.
man who wants to like find out once and for all if international dating is for you, you know, I got some resources for that. I got a book, a guide, and I got a video training. We can link to both, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they'll
Great.
both be in there for sure.
Yes.
Cool, man. Let's see. Any final thoughts? I'm looking through my notes now.
I would
Uh,
love to talk to your female friend because I understand the predicament that she's in. She feels like so many women abandoned. Like she feels like men have dropped the ball, and they have. They have, you know. And so when I propose international dating, I'm not proposing to like don't deal with this. Like I'm saying that experience will be good for all of your relationships. That experience will be good for your relationships back home. It will be good. And so that's why I defend it, not as a, a solution to all of it, not at all. But it is something that I think a Western man will benefit from experiencing like forever, and experience it at least once. Try at least one other wine before you declare this is the best wine in the world.
awesome. Well, thanks, Hans. This was a really fun conversation. We'll add all your links in the show notes. And yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Ruan. Thank you, man.